I'll kick it off. I always like to start these types of presentations with some insights, some trends that are exclusive to Google. So we obviously have access to a lot of data, and it's something that when we show it, our partners find valuable. So I'll kick it off. I think the theme of 2021 obviously is unpredictability. I think in the spring we thought things were going to be returning to normal. The Delta variant kicked in and interfered with a lot of those return to normal plans. So one thing that we know in the midst of all that unpredictability is that we're expecting to see a pretty big increase in year-over-year holiday spend versus 2021. So I think it's between a 10.5% and a 13.5% year over year, which is a pretty significant change. And what we don't know, I mean, we have this data that tells us that people are going to spend more money on this holiday season, but what we don't know is where they're going to spend it. So one thing that the strategies that we're going to talk about is how to maximize that unpredictability. How do we sort of ride the wave of that unpredictability and help you guys get the most out of your spend? Sorry, I just had a chat here about presentation mode. I'm not super sure how to do that, so I'm just going to keep rolling. So in terms of trends, timelines, I don't think the spikes and the valleys of the anticipated spend this year are going to be significantly different than they were last year. Again, we're expecting to see an increase in spend. We don't know exactly how that's going to net out online versus offline, but we can be fairly certain about when that spend is going to happen, when those peaks are going to happen. And one of those major peaks is Cyber Week. 45% of all spend is going to happen within that Cyber Week, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So that's near the end of November. That gives us, less than 8 weeks to really solidify the strategies to make sure that we're ready, that we're locked and loaded to capture that big demand spike that is anticipated to happen near the end of November. I think one thing that is humorous and I always find interesting is that even though the huge overall spike happens in that Cyber Week, we see huge increases in searches that include gift card the days in the week before Christmas. So I think the takeaway from these types of insights, if any, is, we want to be ramped up. We want to be comfortable with our strategies before that Cyber Week hits, when it starts really ramping up. But we also don't want to take our foot off the gas as we're getting directly into that pre-holiday week or even the day before that holiday, because there are a lot of people searching for last minute gifts. So if you're an e-commerce or retail brand that offers gift cards, gift certificates, or gift vouchers, those are the types of things to be promoting heavily during that time. So maybe that's a messaging shift that happens, during that week only. You start promoting those types of gift card ad messages much more heavily. One other trend that we're seeing is generic searches are outpacing brand searches in growth. And, there are naturally more generic searches than branded searches, but the pace of that growth is something that I find super interesting. And I think there's a couple different reasons why we can point to that. One is the way that people search is changing. So more people are using smart home products and using voice search. More people are becoming very comfortable and savvy with how to search for very detailed things on the internet, which naturally changes the syntax and the actual words that are used within that search. Another really good point that we have internally at Google is that every single day, 15% of all searches are brand new to search. That means no one has ever searched those searches before. And the things I talked about in terms of voice search, those are contributing to that change in behavior and how people are searching and generating new searches. So if there's a takeaway from this data point, it's that if your keywords and your account are too narrow, if you don't have the strategies in place to be able to identify and capture some of these new types of searches, you could be missing out on valuable customers and valuable revenue because your targeting is a little bit too narrow. So one encouragement is to, starting now, look at your keywords, look at the way that you're covering searches, and see if there's a way to broaden that a little bit to try to capture these 15% new searches, again, based on the different ways that people are using search. So again, we don't necessarily know where these purchases are going to be happening. These numbers, I think, were generated in June 2021, so fairly recently, but things are changing a lot. So as of June, 85% of holiday shoppers plan to shop in-store. So that's a pretty significant number. 58% of holiday shoppers say they will shop more online than they have in previous years. So I don't think that's necessarily very surprising given the pandemic. I think if there's a takeaway to this slide, again, it's unpredictability. It's, we expect to see people shopping, depending on when and how stores are being opened. A large majority of people can and will shop in store, but there's also a very significant cohort of people who may shift completely to digital and do all of their holiday shopping online. The takeaway there is leverage strategies that can optimize across the spectrum of the consumer journey, whether that's offline or online. So Google Ads has products that can combine basically the revenue potential between online and offline in an automated way. And these are the types of strategies that are going to help you really find success in Q4 and sort of ride the wave of this unpredictability, so to speak. So like I said, we're going to try to distill what Google Ads success looks like down to 5 key fundamentals for Q4. Again, Google Ads can be a very complex platform. So we want to start with, the fundamental things that are going to set you up for really, really strong performance in Q4. So I'll briefly go through the list and then get into a little bit more detail. But the 5 fundamentals that we've identified and we're encouraging our partners to focus on is 1, capture first-party data. So that's user information, email addresses, phone numbers, purchase category information. This is going to help you hedge against some of the data loss that is happening due to privacy changes, due to browser changes, and it's also going to help you activate on that data in the future when some of those targeting options may not be available, and your first party data becomes kind of the foundation for which you're building your targeting models. Number 2 is use data-driven attribution models. So attribution models are essentially how we're giving credit to different engagements along the consumer journey. And Google's data-driven attribution is really powerful. One of the most exciting things that's happened recently is that Google data-driven attribution can now include YouTube and display interactions to get a full picture of how people are engaging with your ads within the Google Ads ecosystem, and optimize based on the order of those interactions. Like if you viewed a YouTube video first and then did a search, and then maybe you clicked on a shopping ad and eventually purchased, we can now stitch together that purchase journey and the system can continually learn. So before, YouTube and display weren't included in that multi-touch attribution automated data-driven model. Now they are. So it's really, really important to adopt that if you haven't already. Number 3 is value-based smart bidding. This is something we've talked about a lot recently. Just to give you a quick overview, every time someone searches, Google Ads makes a prediction on how much that user might be worth based on the value of their cart or their lifetime value if you have those types of inputs in the account. So if you're not using a system that's analyzing the potential value, you may be missing out on a customer that is likely to spend more on an individual purchase than another one. So we'll get into a little bit more detail on that later. 4th, and we talked about this a little bit, is maximizing your keyword coverage because we're seeing so much new query types. Again, you may be missing out on pockets of really valuable customers because your keyword coverage is too narrow. And there's been some changes in some of our keyword match types that I'll talk about later that can help you do that. Number 5, supercharge your smart shopping campaigns. So if you're a retail, an eCom account, smart shopping is really kind of your cleanup hitter of campaign types. It is going to drive probably the majority of your revenue, and it's based on your merchant center feed. So it's really important to optimize your merchant center, your product SKU feeds, the metadata within those, so that smart shopping can scan that data, analyze that data, and try to find customers who are highly likely to not only purchase, but spend more per transaction. So I'll talk a little bit about first-party data. So again, briefly touched on it, but it's really, really important to set up the foundations for capturing that first-party data. So site tagging is really, really important. So one thing that we've been working on with our partners is making sure that the tagging is in place across all the pages on their website. Because again, that's how you capture very valuable data about your customers via something like Google Analytics. But we're also encouraging our customers to try to collect more robust data if possible. So if you're an e-commerce brand, a retail brand, you're already getting a lot of really valuable data. If someone buys something, their product categories, whether that's gender or color, you're automatically getting a lot of that data captured. But one thing that may not be super top of mind for e-com and retail is capturing email addresses. We'll talk a little bit about that later on, but there are some new ways that we can basically stitch together purchases made through logged in data if we can match their email addresses from your backend system to being logged into something like Chrome. So that can help mitigate some of the loss that might be happening due to cookie and browser changes and app tracking that is no longer available. So really, again, capturing as much first-party data is going to be really, really crucial. That's just sort of the setup. The activation on that is being able to use that first-party data to better target prospecting customers. So the more data that you have and the more extensively it's segmented and categorized, the more accurately Google Ads can scan and analyze that data to find customers most like your high value ones that you've already engaged with. So again, this is a now strategy, but it's also a future strategy. We don't know what some of the new rules are going to be in terms of capturing customer behavior through cookies and website browsing, but we do know that first-party data should be relatively safe. So capturing that now, making sure that it's segmented and categorized in a system that can be connected to Google Ads and activated on is going to be really, really crucial. So I'll talk about data-driven attribution just really quickly. So data-driven attribution, again, just a reminder, attribution just means assigning credit for conversions. So early in the ad space, maybe last click conversion was the way that you looked at ads, and basically the last interaction before purchase got 100% of credit. But we know that's not necessarily 100% accurate, because if someone watched a YouTube video and that was how you learned about a brand, and then you made a search, that YouTube interaction should get credit because it influenced that eventual search ad interaction that led to the purchase. So multi-touch attribution is the next upgrade from last click attribution. And that basically applies set rules to how credit is determined. So there's attribution systems like positional, which gives kind of increasing credit from the first click to the last. But the one you should be using now is data-driven attribution. And basically what that means is Google's automated algorithms are through billions of data points, analyzing how much credit should be given to different interactions and different touch points in a dynamic way. So if someone watched a YouTube video, maybe they saw a display ad and clicked on it, but didn't purchase, maybe clicked on a shopping ad, still didn't purchase, but then clicked on a search ad to eventually purchase. We want all of those touch points to get some credit And because that's going to help you inform, ad sequencing, your messaging strategies, and data-driven attribution is the only way to fully give credit where credit is due across your different campaigns and touch points. So data-driven attribution is one of the best foundational things that you can adopt in your account. And there's an update coming, I believe, that will make data-driven attribution the default attribution model within Google Ads. But in the meantime, highly encourage everybody to adopt data-driven attribution if for whatever reason you're not currently using it. Mentioned it earlier, YouTube now gets a credit for those assisted conversions. This is huge because, again, before, if someone watched a YouTube video and then clicked on a search ad, that YouTube engagement would get 0 credit, even though it led to that search click. So with the updated data-driven attribution models, YouTube click or a 10-second view will get partial credit for that conversion. So that's huge because, again, previously, if you were running YouTube, you probably were under attributing the impact YouTube was driving. This will unlock seeing the full value of YouTube because, again, it will get credit for those influenced searches. So value bidding. This is maybe a little bit in the weeds, but I think it's worth mentioning. Value bidding is the way that we optimize for the maximum number of conversions that we possibly can. And the way that we can do that is through value bidding strategies like TROAS or maximize conversion value. Sorry, I was on the wrong slide. And just quickly to give you a review of different bid strategies, bid strategy like target CPA or maximize conversions, these are only looking at volume. So it's only looking at the transaction volume, but it's not looking at the transaction value. So again, every time, and I think I mentioned this earlier, every time a click happens in Google Ads, if you're using a value-based bid strategy, Google is predicting the ultimate value of that click. So it's scanning all of your data, all of the account data to say, okay, we think customer A is going to deliver a higher return on advertising than customer B. If you're using a target CPA or maximize conversion value strategy, it's ignoring that value column completely. So you're not able to optimize to a higher average order value or a higher average cart value. The other really amazing thing about value-based bid strategies is that if you have offline data from your stores, the system will predict whether the value of that click will be higher online or offline, and it will optimize and try to push people towards the either online or offline purchase path that it's predicted to result in the highest value overall. So in general, value bidding is the way to go if you're using retail. If you're in retail or ecom, again, it's going to help you maximize the overall value of your investment and not just the overall transaction volume, which is super important. I think the last major topic here is keyword coverage. So we're trying to encourage people to think about search as kind of a mini funnel. Branded searches can be considered like the lowest branch on that. That's a very high intent. Those people are likely to buy. But as we start broadening our keyword types, we're capturing more of that funnel. So if someone's more in the research phase, we probably still want to engage with them because you want to be discoverable if they're trying to compare and contrast between two different brands, and ultimately make the decision to purchase for you. If you're not in those research or exploration phase keywords, your competitors are hitting your customers and reaching them with their messaging earlier in that decision process. And like I mentioned earlier, people are getting more savvy with how they're searching. So you want to be present across that exploration, research, and high intent phase. One thing I always like to remind my customers is that you only pay for a click or pay for an ad interaction when it's clicked. So if your ad just shows up on a keyword query early in that funnel, you're not going to pay for it unless they click on it. But there is value in appearing and getting your brand out there during those early phases. And the way to do that is expand your keyword set. So we're encouraging everybody to at least explore broad match keywords And that's can be sort of controversial because in the past, broad match was almost too broad. It didn't deliver really good performance, but we've made some key changes to broad match that add a layer of intelligence that it didn't have before. So broad match is now the only keyword type that integrates contextual signals and can analyze things like your ad messaging, the landing page content of your ad, and decide whether or not to show an ad to somebody. So the example I like to share is broad match keywords in Google Ads can now differentiate between Rose the flower and Rosé the drink by scanning your landing page content to determine the category that that person is looking for. So it's a really powerful update. We're encouraging everybody to experiment with broadening their keyword sets, because again, there's a lot of opportunity outside those narrow keywords, again, based on the difference in how people are searching, and you could be missing out on a lot of revenue opportunity with a too narrow keyword set. So I want to make sure we have enough time at the end of this. The last one is shopping feed optimization. I think this is something that is necessary for a brand and an agency to work together on, because you guys are probably owning the SKU process, the metadata that's associated with your products, but there are best practices in how that data is organized and categorized within the merchant center itself. And that will drive a lot of performance uplift for smart shopping campaigns, which again are probably the most powerful types of campaigns and the ones that are going to drive a large majority of your revenue going into Q4. Cool. So I just had one bonus section that I thought was interesting and might be worth sharing. If you've been around the block, you may remember Shoppable YouTube. That was sunset for a while, but that's something that's now been reactivated. So you can now add your Merchant Center feed to a YouTube campaign and make it shoppable. So the ads are very similar to a smart shopping ad. They basically appear as a carousel under your YouTube video. And again, that makes your YouTube video much more shoppable, much more interactive than it was before. And that's something that you should talk to your agencies about if you're planning on running YouTube or already running YouTube. Cool. So I'll start hitting these questions. Appreciate the time. Audience question: what is the one piece of advice you would give for an e-commerce brand prepping for holiday while navigating the new Apple iOS updates? Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the number one piece of advice would be the first party data that I was talking about. So if you can leverage that first party data to its fullest extent, that should give you a very solid foundation in spite of Apple iOS updates. So again, you can take your customer match lists, basically your CRM output of your audiences, and import those into Google Ads. And Google Ads can create a remarketing list for those, but it can also create similar audiences, which is taking that source data and creating a brand new audience that you can use to prospect new customers. So I think the first party data is really, really important. One other big piece that I didn't get into because it's a little bit advanced at this point is we have a new offering called enhanced conversions. And that's the process by which, I think I did mention it, you can match your logged in email address, if you have that within your customer match list, to, let's say, a YouTube view. So let's say someone's logged into YouTube, they watch a video, and then they eventually buy on your site. With some of the cookie tracking changes, you're not natively able to stitch that journey together. But with our new enhanced conversion feature, you add some extra code on your website, and that allows you to link that logged in email to an email that you may already have within your database and stitch that purchase together and compensate for some of the data loss that you might be experiencing. So I hope that answers your question. Always happy to field some of these over email as well. What keywords will get your account flagged? I don't think there's a general overarching answer to that question. I think we see more ad messaging getting accounts flagged than individual keywords. I think my major recommendation there is if you guys are planning on launching some new messaging in advance of holiday, try to get that uploaded as early as possible, just in case that there's some flagging issues, and you can resolve those quickly. your agency partner can work with my team to expedite the approval processes. I think most retail accounts aren't necessarily saying anything controversial, so the risk level should be relatively low. But I think it's more about ad messaging and try to get that stuff uploaded as early as possible. We got a 1-minute warning. Any other questions so far? Again, I can happy to communicate via email. Appreciate the time. I hope this was helpful. Again, just remember the 5 fundamentals. I can send this deck out and share it with the Hawk team so you guys have access to it. But really appreciate you having me, and enjoy the rest of the lineup.
Thank you, Isaac.